right, it's 6 o'clock and I think we'll get started. I really appreciate everyone that's turned out. We were hoping we'd get good turnout. It looks like it. I think we've got several on virtual also. We sent a notice out about this to every customer that we have. We put it in the paper. We had a letter to the editor about this. It was on our website and so forth. So hopefully the word is out, and because this is a very important decision we're going to be talking about tonight. We really wanted to get the citizens' input before we did anything on it. Let me start off with our first slide. Well, we'll show the existing treatment plant first, I guess. That's the existing treatment plant on the Legion, American Legion Road, off Savannah. But what we're talking about tonight is a different concept that's come up. Let's get back to the next slide. The purpose of the workshop. It's a spoiler alert, but it's about working with the county on a wastewater system rather than doing it alone. So let's go through this. I'll start off. The purpose of the workshop is to solicit public input on a very important decision of the Board of Directors must make regarding the future of the BPW's wastewater facilities. As will be discussed, it not only involves major financial and environmental considerations, but also contains sensitive civic considerations. And the next part's important for the questions that may come up. At this point, this is an unexplored concept. No detailed planning or design has been authorized. No agreements have been reached. We therefore do not have any details about detailed cost estimates, only magnitude of order of magnitude estimates. We'll not be able to provide detailed answers to any of your questions at this point because we don't have them for ourselves. We have not talked to our engineers on this. This has just been an internal discussion so far. So anything we've come up with to date is just what we've talked about internally, basically, and with the county that you'll learn about in a few minutes. What we're trying to achieve by this meeting is to get the public's the feel for the public's feeling on this concept of working with the county. So by the end of the evening, we hope to get your mood and those online to find out what the citizens and other ratepayers think about this idea. The board has authorized the staff before this even came up to begin a long-range plan for the future of our wastewater needs. This will be an ongoing review of potential for future projects going forward. And at this point, we're looking at initially just two major alternatives. The first was hardening the existing Howard Seymour wastewater reclamation plant. Hardening, we mean making it less susceptible to the impacts of sea level rise and major storms. The construction of a new plant at a different location to get it out. Right now, the present Howard Seymour plant is in the floodplain and is more susceptible to flooding, although it's presently built to above flood elevation, the 9-foot flood elevation in that area. So we are fine for as it is now. And then the thing we really want to concentrate on or discuss in detail this evening is the proposal to send our wastewater to the Sussex County Treatment Plant for treatment. As I said, hardening of the existing plant would be done by using dikes, levees, tight water containments, elevating critical equipment, etc., against sea level rise and climate change. We would also have to improve the access to the plant so that when we do have storm events, that we could enter the plant with the roads being flooded. So we'd need some type of boat or other facilities. In the past, when we've had flooding, Army trucks and so forth have accessed the plant and to keep operations ongoing. Obviously, under this alternative, we would use the existing outfall, a very rough, and all these, as I said earlier, all these estimates are just orders of magnitude. They could be 20, 25, 30% off or more. These are just orders of magnitude. And so I go through this, you'll see how this is it's very obvious that the various options are very much different in cost. So for this hardening, we feel it's in the range of $20 million. The other option that's been suggested several times is to build a new plant out of the floodplain. And that's fine if, but finding a site for the plant and building a plant at a remote location is not that simple. We think that the plant itself would probably cost in the range of $30 million. And the land acquisition, again, anywhere near Lewes would be extremely difficult to site a new treatment plant at this point. And the cost of the plant itself, the land itself, would probably be another $5.5 million or so. So the total for the plant, this does not include the discharge, would be in the range of $35.5 million. Now, the options for discharging are primarily three. If we use the present outfall for a remote plant, we would need the pumping facilities to get it out to the wherever that plant site might be, and back in just to discharge at our existing outfall. We've estimated, maybe for no reason other than just a wild guess at the distance, because we don't know where that site would be. We put 10 miles in here, and if it was $1.2 million per mile, which is a figure that I've been given, that would be $47.5 million. That's for the total of the piping system and the treatment plant. The total cost for that option with the treatment plant would be $47.5 million. An ocean outfall has been brought up. That would be. Now, can we wait till we go through then we'll answer the questions at the end. Ocean outfall obviously is a potential alternative, but as we've seen in Rehoboth, that's not a cheap out either. I mean, we've estimated that to be the outfall itself to be $52.5 million. So including the treatment plant, we're up to $88 million for that option. Land application, and I love land application. My previous life, I was a consulting engineer. We introduced land application spray irrigation to the state of Delaware and designed the existing Wolf Neck plant irrigation. So I've designed a lot of spray irrigation in this state and other places. And it's one of my favorite methods of handling wastewater. But in this situation, we would need approximately 300 acres to handle the plant size that we would need. And it obviously would be very difficult to find. I've been given an estimate of about $30 million for a piece of property if we could find it in this area. And then we need the piping and so forth to get to and from it. So if you add the cost of that to the cost of the treatment plant, it would be $77.5 million for that option. Again, these are very rough figures, but you can see the orders of magnitude that we're talking about. They're in that range. The option that we're really here to focus on is the option that has come up of sending the wastewater to Sussex County for treatment. The proposal it would be that the DPW's wastewater would be pumped to the county's Wolf Neck plant. The treated water, along with the county's water, would be treated on an upgraded plant that they would build at that site. They would take the existing plant and upgrade it to be able to handle our flow and to remove nutrients, so it could be discharged into the canal. The existing plant would be demolished and made available for other purposes. As I say, the water that would be produced would be have a greater volume, of course. We're talking in terms of about 2.7 million gallons flow. According to this proposal, Sussex County has proposed that they would be responsible for the costs of the upgrades to their treatment facilities and all the necessary pipings to get there and back to our outfall pipe. The DPW would be responsible for the decommissioning and demolition of the existing plant. And necessary things that we would have to do would be to upgrade 2 of our major pumping stations. And each of those would be about $3 million a piece. So our total project cost would be $6 million. With that alternative, the design flow of the county's plant would be upgraded to 3 million gallons total. 2.75 million gallons would be pumped back and for discharge at our present outfall. The county would continue to irrigate as much as they could at the existing site when conditions allowed them to irrigate. Of course, the amount of nutrient and biological load would be greater than it is presently, because our present plant has extremely high quality water coming out of it. And but even with this addition, we would still meet that outfall would still meet the TMDLs, or total maximum daily load, that's allowed by our permit. So we would still be in compliance with the permit with the additional flow from the Wolf Neck plant combined with our plant. Because the existing Wolf Neck plant has large lagoons associated with it, it's a lagoon type treatment system presently, and those lagoons would stay. Water could be stored for days or weeks if needed, but on a routine basis, the flow from that plant to the canal would only occur during outgoing tides, which makes a difference. Right now, it's been calculated that 5% of our flow goes back to the inland bays. Only 5%, the rest of it goes out the canal and Roosevelt Inlet into the bay. A small amount of nutrients does go back because our discharge is very low in nutrients to start with, but theoretically, some of it does go back to inland bays, and we have to compensate for that by taking other nutrients out of the watershed to compensate for that. In this idea, virtually no nutrients would be able to get back into the inland bays. So here's a summary of the rough costs. If the hardening, we think it's going to be about $20 million. The construction of a plant at a new location, if the discharge was to our existing outfall, it would be about 47.5. Ocean outfall looks to be closer to 88 million, and spray irrigation, land disposal, 77.5. Sending the wastewater to Sussex County for treatment would only cost the DPW $6 million. So if this occurred, the board was originally planning to do this long-range study that I mentioned, and anything that came out of that would be done over a number of years going forward. We were not ready to move forward with it immediately, but over time, over the next many years, we would harden the plant to make sure that it was capable of withstanding major storms and the potential of sea level rise and flooding. The hardening option, the new plant option would take several years. We would be in no major hurry to start, but we would at least try to find land while we could to locate that. If we go with the county's option, they're interested in moving forward immediately. They have ARPA money, and they're planning to use that to do this, to do any future improvements to their plant. And this is an option that they're looking at. We're interested to talk to us about. We recognize it's a sensitive issue and realize the decision on how to plan for future wastewater facilities could have a major effect of our rates and the environment. We don't have all the information right now, but felt we needed to get this out before we did anything on this and get your opinions before moving forward. Again, if we move forward with this, the board will certainly keep everybody informed as we move forward. So we're at this point looking for your feedback. I'll say again that we have made no decisions on this. This was something that just came up when we mentioned that we were going for long range planning. It turns out the county was interested in long range planning. So when we talked about it, this came as an obvious option. Again, we've made no commitments to anybody, and right now we're still looking for the pulse of the community as to the viability of this and their will. It's a big difference in cost going forward. It's certainly attractive financially, but there's other issues to consider. So we're anxious to get your response. And anybody else? No.
To me, there's a lot of things that need to take place. Press went through a lot of the math, but at the end of the day, we would have to have a tour of the plant. What's their safety record? I know what ours is. What's their safety record for their people? What's the water quality, incident reports, elevation certificates, spray irrigation capacity? So the fact is what Press is saying is we don't have an answer. What we're looking to understand is what your concerns are. And then we can bring those concerns into those meetings and make sure that we're doing the right things and getting the right information to ultimately be able to make the decision.
Yeah, what questions do you have besides us?
Well, actually, just one more thing I want to add just for everyone's information. There's been a lot of discussion in the sea level rise committee, the executive committee, about the susceptibility of the plant. So currently the minimum elevation of the plant for flooding is 9.5 feet. The current 100-year floodplain is 7 feet for that site. With sea level rise up to the year 2060, it would bring us to 10 feet. So there, as Press said earlier, the plant immediately is not at risk from flooding during storms, but this is a long-term issue that we know we need to address. And these are the options that Press has outlined cover those. But I just wanted to put everyone at ease that that facility as it exists right now is at low risk. And we're looking for the long-term issues here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just have a general.
Can you come up here so we can get, we have, no, come on up to the rostrum, please, so the virtual people can hear us too.
Yeah, and state your name and.
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Dave Jones, and I live on Marina Drive, and I have a couple of general questions.
Sure.
And it first has to do with the Seymour wastewater facility. And just to be educated about it, what area or what homes or what communities are the wastewater being sent to that facility on American Legion Drive? Is it just the city?
That's a city, and could you give the other developments that we serve?
It would be basically the city limits, and then we will eventually serve Lewes Waterfront Preserve, Tower Hill. Anything that's developed on New Road up until, or on Gills Neck Road up until, I believe it's Schofield. And then we also take the flow from the county,
Yeah.
which is through a flow agreement.
Right, we presently, about 4 years ago or so, the county approached us. You know, they use lagoons and spray irrigation for their treatment. In the winter, their ability to irrigate is reduced, and during wet periods. And to give themselves more flexibility, they came to us. We have very low flows, relatively low flows in the off season as compared to the summer. So in the winter, when they need more capacity off the spray irrigation system, and we have plenty available to us, they flow into our system, part of their flow.
So part of the Wolf facility gets into the.
To our plant.
The plant.
To our plant.
Okay.
They pay us the same way everybody else pays us, the same amount per gallon. So
And one of the reasons why I came here, and we're talking about long-range planning, but we shouldn't use a Band-Aid for this. This is a really important, topic, and it should be for everybody, what happens to the wastewater. Now, I think Lewes is a water community, and to me, we shouldn't be utilizing the canal as a discharge after the wastewater treatment, either from Wolf facility or from the Seymour facility. So the other thing is you're talking about the money, and the first thing I noticed at 77 million, we're talking about 60 homes in Lewes, basically what they're worth. So these numbers, you think they're big, 6 million. I was thinking, 100 million would be less than 100 homes around here. So in order to do something now in the future, and I am a proponent of getting Sussex County involved, I'm just thinking that instead of utilizing the canal, do another treatment facility, and you're talking about a field of 300 acres, I guess, to do the wastewater. Now would be the best time. I mean, before it would have been better because the land prices would have been half, but it's just going to get more expensive and more expensive. But these numbers of 77 million for a community this size is really, to me, not shocking. So that's my comment, and thanks for listening.
no, thanks for coming.
Thank
for
you.
giving us your opinion. Nick, go ahead.
I have a lot of questions. I've been involved, I guess, back in 1999, when the plant had a capacity of 750,000 gallons per day. And it was discovered that the plant was operating above and beyond the maximum capacity. And the history goes back to tell us all that the plant was enlarged, it was doubled. And when it was discovered by the Environmental Protection Agency, there was a moratorium against any new sewage coming to the plant until it was completed.
Nick, is this, I mean,
This-
we've been through this several times.
I know we have, and I,
No, but can we keep this on
Yeah.
this present?
yeah, I'm getting there, but I just want to say that we're at that stage again, 23 years later, we're dealing with a similar situation. But I have a lot of questions. What I understand is, and I'm kind of confused about why you're having a meeting. I think you're talking about what to do with the sewage, but I understand that the spray irrigation plant is full. Maybe I'm wrong. And that the Lewes plant is reaching a certain capacity beyond what they can manage at the existing state.
That's not true, but go ahead.
Okay, well, anyway, as the expansion and the addition to the sewage plant continues to grow exponentially, in my opinion, that something has to happen. And it has to happen sooner rather than later. I really believe that.
Well, I
Um,
think, and Charlie can speak to this more, the capacity at that plant is more than capable of handling our current needs and our future needs. And we are not going to outgrow that plant in the near term. Charlie, you
I
want?
mean, just going back to the press's comment about where the wastewater service area is, this is all planned out 20 years ago. We built what the wastewater service area is in coordination with the county. So if you look at the wastewater service area maps, we have butt right up against where the county stops. It was all planned out in conjunction with the county. And when we did that, we knew exactly what number of EDUs we would expect from the wastewater service area. And we designed the plant such that it has 1.5 MGD average capacity now, 2.25 potential future with the addition of more membranes. And the 2.25 MGD is plenty to handle the whole wastewater service area as planned. I mean, this is all planned out. It's not like we've been just kind of sitting around not doing anything.
So, but I guess what I'm getting at is the plant in its current location is a violation of the Clean Water Act, except there's a permit from DENREC. And
It's a national permit, actually.
pardon me,
It's a national permit, actually.
as a federal permit or a state permit?
It's not monitored, managed by the state, but it's a national permit.
It's an NRPDS permit.
National.
But it's a state permit from DENREC. Is that correct?
Yeah, but it's a national permit.
But it's in a tidal wetland. That's my point. And I think if you read in the Clean Water Act, it says that having a sewage treatment plant in a tidal wetland is a violation unless it's permitted. So my point is that the sewage treatment plant needs to be moved to another location. And Tom, I know you mentioned that your elevation was above 9.5 feet. I don't know about those sludge bins. I don't know if they're above the floodplain level.
No,
And
they're not. They are at 6.
they're below the floodplain.
Average is 6.
They're 6 feet, and our emergency plans have for those to be emptied in advance of a storm.
Right.
So
The land-based program, I know that when Rehoboth was planning to do one of 3 things, they were going to do ocean outfall, spray irrigation, and the other option was the rapid infiltration basin. And there was a plan with Artesia. They had a site located, but as we all know, the sewage went offshore in Rehoboth. The rapid infiltration basin would be an injection. There is state property out by Westcott's Corner. It's not 300 acres, but I think when you say 300 acres, that's for land application for spray irrigation. That's not for
Nick,
rapid
you and I
infiltration.
have talked about that, and I've told.
I know
you
we
that
have.
That's not capable of something.
Why?
Because it's not big enough.
It doesn't need 300 acres to do a rapid infiltration
No,
basin.
but
If that's for spray irrigation.
That site is not, that place would be a marsh in weeks. We
Um,
use that.
how-
We've talked about this, Nick.
I know, but it's
Using thousands of acres.
it's an option for,
No,
rapid
it's not an
infiltration basin goes in the ground. It's not sprayed
It's
out
not
on the
it's not an option.
surface.
It still has to percolate into the ground.
All right, let me just continue and then I'll be quiet. Yeah, I don't know where the numbers are coming from. And I understand that it's an estimate and the numbers could be larger or smaller.
Yes.
I think my position, is that the plant cannot stay where it is. It needs to be moved to another location, build a new plant. And one last question. The Long Neck plant, do we have an option to send our sewage to the Long Neck facility or not?
No,
That's not possible.
I've discussed that, but it's not possible.
So it's the spray irrigation plant, the Wolf Neck spray irrigation, the Lewes Board of Public Works wastewater treatment plant, period. Or we have to come up with another plan. Is that correct?
For Lewes, for BP.
Right. No, I understand. I understand. Well, I think, again, I would just kind of finish my comments to say that the population continues to grow and the demand on this treatment plant continues to grow. And
I think Charlie's addressed that.
yeah, I know.
Press, just so I'm clear, if the board's wastewater flow goes to the Wolf Neck plant, the Wolf Neck plant gets upgraded such that only
250,000 gallons per day would be spray irrigated. The rest of it would be utilizing the board's existing discharge.
No, it will have the capacity for $250,000, but they'll irrigate as much as they can. When
Okay.
they can.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Okay, thank you.
that's my understanding. Thanks, Nick. Sumner? I'm sorry.
Sumner Crosby, 558 Pilot Town Road. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to hear what you guys are considering before it's gotten so far down the track that there's no chance to, have any say in things. I really appreciate what you guys are doing at this stage. My first question is, will there be additional opportunities to share feedback as things move along? Is this
Well,
the only chance we
what we're
have?
hoping to do is make a decision as soon as possible on this and get the feeling of the community. If there's a lot of pushback, overwhelming pushback, I guess, we might just cancel it. If there's, if people want to hear more and we want to pursue it, then we continue, see if it made sense.
Well, I
But we-
think
One
just
of
to
one of the reasons that we're here talking about it now is because the county is going to basically really upgrade their plant. If they came to us and said, we're upgrading our plant, period, and we have an opportunity to talk about a joint venture. Now, we're talking 3 to 5 years in the future, because by the time permits and everything else get done and so forth and so on, it's not going to be built tomorrow, but they're going to do it. And the reason they came to us is we're going to offer you this opportunity. If you don't want it, fine. We're going to do what we're going to do, and then it's done. Then the opportunity doesn't happen anymore.
Thank you.
Right, and so-
That helps.
Just to clarify, and if we don't go with the county, then the other opportunities we would continue to explore.
Mhm.
And there's less of a time constraint on those. But as Tom said, the county's up against, these monies have deadlines associated with them. And they do need to be, the county does need to make a decision one way or the other. Sorry. So if we.
And what's the
hear-
time frame for that? How many weeks or months
Well,
from now will that
they've
decision be made?
They've asked for a decision as soon as possible since they do have that clock running. So
Okay.
I don't think we have a date, but they've asked to, I mean, we've only been considering this for 2 months, I guess. It first came up and we discussed it amongst ourselves and what it involved and decided to do this.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm prepared to offer the specific kinds of comments that I would typically like to offer because this is all new to me. But just based on some of the conversation that we've already heard, I just want to throw my 2 cents into this thing. I've spoken in other venues on other issues related to this. What I want to say here today is based on my experience when I worked at the Environmental Protection Agency. Unless this is some crazy permit that I'm not aware of, the fact that it's permitted through the DENREC, it went through a process of approval with EPA. So it is approved with EPA as a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit under the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act. Not sure about the wetland issue that you said, but as you said, there's a permit. If the permit is made, then it should be all right. I don't know the details. On this issue of RIBS, years ago, I looked into this for some of the other RIBS schemes that were proposed in the
Filtration
time.
basins, yeah.
Rapid infiltration basin systems.
Thanks.
As somebody up here, I couldn't tell who it was, it might have been press, suggested, we would create a wetland pretty quickly. One of the things that I've said, I was in here just the other day saying this to the joint group of City Council and BPW. I worked with Tom Panetta as a member of the Planning Commission on a sea level rise group that looked at a whole bunch of factors. And one of the things we heard in that group, one of the things that this BPW heard from experts at the Delaware Geological Survey a while back is that because we live in an area with shallow groundwater and because of the geology of this area, which is not exactly a perfect sandbox, but it's very coarse grained. There's a lot of movement underground. The water moves pretty freely. There's unconsolidated sediments. What we put into the ground will move very rapidly, but it ultimately depends on how much room there is in the ground to take the water. And this is what Mr. Lee was talking about. It's a nice idea to have a ribs, but based on everything I've seen, based on everybody that's looked at it, it's almost impossible to put the kind of volumes at the rate that you need to put them in order to process the water that you're expecting to process using a ribs approach. The geologists at Delaware Geological Survey proved that years ago. I would not be in favor of a ribs approach, particularly not at Westcote's Corner. That is altogether too close to our wellhead protection area. And as you all said the other night, this is the best place to have water supply. We don't really have any choices to move. We have to do what we can to protect that water. All right. Something you asked, you said something about storage, something about only discharging when the tide is going out.
Yeah.
To me, that raised a flag of storage. How do you handle everything that needs to
Well,
be moved?
Are you familiar with the Wolf Neck plant? Have you seen it? Do we have a picture of it? Photo of it?
Yeah,
We
It's
can
in-
probably bring it
it's
up.
in the backups.
Maybe
Well, I
I'll
can
bring that up.
on Google
But
Maps
it
too.
consists of 4 large ponds. And that's the treatment process and storage process, so that there's enough storage in there. I forget it, how many days. Mark Proudy's here. Mark, do you know the storage at Wolf Neck?
No, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so you would have the ability to foreseeably store water through any tide cycle, any discharge
Yeah,
situation that
this
you
was
might.
meant to hold through the wet season of the winter, the cold season of the winter, all the flow that was coming in.
Right, and that was the other question I had was how do you deal with that 600,000 gallons that you guys have had that arrangement with? If you don't have the spray irrigation, it will just be built into the overall
It'll have
discharge
plenty-
processing capability of this new plant.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, because our plant is discharging all the time.
right.
Yeah, the Hans Medlars, the county engineer, has done this out at the Wolf Neck, the Long Neck facility of the county. He took a lagoon system out there and modified it with a system called a biolac system that converts it into a different type of treatment plant. And that the remaining ponds have quite a bit of storage available.
Okay. So again, I just want to make sure that wherever this thing is, because based on the story I just told about groundwater, this has become my mantra, right? With sea level rise, we learned from the Delaware Geological Survey in several different meetings that groundwater will rise as well. So whatever we're doing on the surface, whatever we're doing with lagoon storage and everything else is susceptible to changes in the groundwater from below. And hopefully that'll all be taken care of. I trust that you guys will take care of that. Question about the loadings. You made a comment about how there will be more discharge. Can you give us any more information
Well,
on
yeah,
that?
well, I'll take it off the top of my head, I think the nutrient coming out of our plant, the nitrogen, I think it's less than 2.4 milligrams per liter on average. Our permit is 8 milligrams per liter. So we're well below that. I think the system that is being proposed by the county with this biolac system produces 8 milligrams per liter from that.
No, it's
Five?
between 5.
Okay.
So, so that's the target is 5. That would be the permit.
That's no, the permit's 8, but the combined flow would now come out at 8. So I'm sorry, at 5. So we would be 3 milligrams per liter under the permit restrictions.
But how much more than the current discharge?
3.
2.4 right now.
And again, it's also.
So the flow would be
it's-
going from a maximum of, I guess, 1.5 million is permitted now. At 8, I guess that is. And it would be going to 2.75 at 5.
When I was at EPA, we used to look at water quality issues in terms of the percentage of the receiving water body, that was wastewater. Is there a way of expressing these in those terms, both now and with the plan? Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I missed that.
Receiving water has a certain discharge rate. How does your effluent, both today and granted, tides change that situation, but I'm assuming there's a way of characterizing the minimum and maximum flows and so on.
Well, I know it goes back to, maybe you'll, I don't know if you know Tom or not, but again, that at some time in the past, the flow of the canal was gauged and how much flowed which ways. And as I understand.
Yeah, we did a dye study in 2004, a thorough dye study. We actually determined that only 2.5% of the flow makes it to the Rehoboth Bay. But when we went to DENREC to develop the nutrient offset trading program, they doubled it for conservancy and it made it 5%.
What about the percentage of, I guess what I'm wondering is what the discharge, I'm just wondering what percentage of the flow going that way is our current flow regime? You know, how much water is how much of that canal is coming out of the pipe versus coming from upstream? And when you get done with this new thing, how much of that water will be?
Has to be very, very small percentage.
Not
Okay.
Sure, I understand, but
You-
97.5% of our flow goes out the inlet.
I'll come back to you.
But-
I don't want to belabor this point.
Because we discharge continuously,
Mhm.
it will go down the canal and then come back.
Yes, it does.
So
Right.
that's a sloshing effect.
Right.
What the county would do is just do it only on the outgoing tide.
I get that. Thank you. I was just saying to somebody before we started here, my understanding is your plant is state of the art for the way you always, every time I've ever heard BPW talk about the removal efficiency, and maybe it's particularly with biologics, it's right up there with the best of them. How will this new system, if you go with the third option, working with the county, how different will that be?
That's still up in the air.
That's something we have to.
If we're gonna pursue that option, that plant design something we'll have to review.
We don't
It's in
know
the
what
concept
design
phase
is
at this
right
point.
now. So we wouldn't even think about it without going to that step.
Again, we really haven't even talked to our engineers about this.
All right.
We
But
have very little
you're
data.
correct that the microfiltration system we have is state of the art. So
Right. I mean, I'd hate to see things go too terribly in the wrong way. You know, I'm sure there are a number of people there who feel that way. I have the utmost trust in you guys to do what's right. I hope there are opportunities as we move forward to figure this out. I mean, I guess the last question I'll ask, and then I promise I'll get out of your hair here, is I have to imagine that there are going to be questions about rates. And when we hitch our wagon to the county, no offense to the county, to somebody out there, you know, we lose control. Have you thought
No,
about?
I don't think we haven't, again, it's something we haven't talked about. I think we would keep our own facility. We'd have our own business, just like we do today. We're not going to give that up. We'd still be the operator of the sewer systems throughout.
A joint venture kind of arrangement.
yeah, I think
Not Lewis.
the piece of the information that we still don't have is while what press presented was all the capital upfront costs, you know, we have the routine everyday maintenance and operation of the wastewater treatment plant. The county would bill us for the routine operation of the Wolf Neck Point for our prorated portion of it. And we have no idea what those numbers are right now.
And basically all there is all that Lewes basically holds at that point is the process of collecting the bills and making sure everybody's paying and all of that. And then the fact that you've got a pipe that's connected to a big set of pumps pushing stuff from Wolf Neck
Well,
to that pipe, correct?
And the entire
Collection system.
collection system. and
Okay, fair enough.
things.
But in terms of what would be down there, there would literally be a pipe and maybe
Correct.
some valves and pump stations and things like that.
Right.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Paul?
Just a couple quick questions. Would Lewes be able to eliminate its NPDES permit if you went with the county? Or would you still have to hold one?
Haven't worked that out. I think we would keep the permit, but I don't know that.
Or a nice thing to get rid of?
Or a nice thing to have too, if you don't. If
Right.
you don't have any land to spray, yeah.
Does it follow that the more expensive proposal would cause a higher rate? Or do you foresee a way to keep rates the same or just rise them incrementally as time goes on, kind of historically? Do you have any feel for that? I mean, if you borrow 88 million, are the rates going to go up more than if you borrow 6?
I think definitely.
I think so. I would think so. And at the end of the day, if you were to go with the county and you were to tear down the plant or remove it, you're still going to need to keep your outfall. Is that right?
That's the idea.
Okay, and then you are going to have a JV agreement with the county where you are basically outsourcing treatment. Everything else you're going to retain, collection, billing, still going to have people at BPW that are going to go to manholes, stuff like that.
And that's the thought, but we haven't really discussed it, but that's our thinking.
So if you keep the permit, do you keep the responsibility if you have, to put it lightly, a bad day?
That's a good point, and it's one we have to certainly be very careful about. So, but I don't have an answer today. I think we would have to protect ourselves as to the.
Be nice if you
Today.
could get out of the responsibility.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Although the other side of it is that it gives us a certain amount of control over what's going into the canal from a community perspective.
Yeah, and Charlie is a great engineer and you guys will, if you structure the JV correctly, you'll still have input.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a joint venture or how it's gonna be structured, actually, of course, but we'll make it as tight as we can, certainly.
Maybe the
We're not
reverse
gonna
of
jump
what,
into this with our eyes closed.
yeah, maybe
yeah.
the reverse of what Ken Branner has, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're just simply outsourcing the treatment, to me, it makes an awful lot of sense. Having run a wastewater treatment plant before, the best day of that was not running it anymore. There's always something. And to
That's
a
the
point
dream.
that was kind of made briefly, having metering lagoons is a luxury most of the small towns in Sussex County don't have. So if your plant has a
Storage-
hiccup,
we call them storage lagoons, but go ahead.
okay, well, if your plant has a hiccup and you need to fix it and you can't run flow through it, what does a small town do without a lagoon? People still flush. Wastewater still comes in. Where does it go?
Right.
And Rehoboth has the same problem and Lewes has the same problem and Milton has the same problem. And a lot of these small towns have the same problem. But if you do go with Hans and Company, you've got some serious lagoons. And it seems to me, based on the cost factors and the fact that you would be removing your wastewater plant, it seems like a win-win to me. That's my 2 cents.
Appreciate it.
The other thing is, the current plant as it is, I'm trying to remember what the useful life was, but we're
Getting there?
there. And, we just put in new membranes. And things are starting to fall apart. Big things.
Never a good thing.
No, so, our headworks was how much is the headworks? 5 million?
I take exception to that.
Yeah,
I
me
think,
too.
I mean,
I don't mean falling apart.
I understand. I
But
understand.
you're having to replace major items. And so that's an ongoing cost as well.
Yes,
If
there's
we
ongoing
don't do
maintenance
anything more.
costs. There's ongoing maintenance costs, but we spent $1 million replacing all the membranes. There's pumps and other equipment that needs to be replaced because it's at the facility itself is not the end of its life.
No, I'm not talking
I
about.
don't wanna
the-
set-
The
I don't wanna
equipment
set the
needs to
wrong
be
impression
replaced,
here.
obviously. I'm not saying
Well, it's a
that
mechanical
the
plant.
building's gonna fall over. I'm just saying that the equipment needs to be replaced.
It's a mechanical plant. Machines have lives, machines take wear,
Right,
and they
of
need to be
course.
replaced. And if you don't have a lagoon, it's a 3 o'clock in the morning event.
Mhm.
So wastewater treatment plants are strange animals. And if you can possibly get out from underneath one, my suggestion is you wholeheartedly do it.
Thank you, Paul.
Just my 2 cents.
So one of the things I just wanted to mention, and it's kind of late, but Sumner made a point regarding the quality of the effluent coming out. And one of the things that that was brought up early on when this was just, just a discussion topic was, and Tom kind of hit on it, is that we put brand new filters in. And so one of the things that we mentioned, again, don't know if it's viable, but is actually using the filters as a polishing mechanism of some sort, because the same filters that are used for this wastewater treatment, it's the same technology that's used on drinking water. So just as an overriding, topic of discussion that was brought up.
Might be able to take their water and make it better.
Hi, my name's Barbara Curtis and I live in Ship Carpenter Square. The previous speakers had a lot of the same questions I had. I think I came prepared to talk about or to listen to, are you going to move the plant or are you going to harden it? And this is a complete shock, but my concern is maybe a philosophical one. And that's that, it seems like Sussex County, who is responsible for an awful lot of the overdevelopment that is plaguing us now, is looking to bribe us so they can do more overdevelopment. They can, support this. They asked Rehoboth to use their outfall and Rehoboth said no. So now they've come to Lewes, can we use your outfall? Because they want to expand. They want to get rid of all the farmland. They want to congest our highways even worse than they are now. And if no one gives them an outfall, hey, maybe things will get manageable around here. And I think that that's worth considering.
I think that's a fair perspective. I do. My guess is the county has other options. And if transfer tax is what transfer tax I think will be for a long time, I think it's a tough putt to stop it. But I think those are fair questions that we need to understand the impact that we would have on that kind of growth.
Mhm.
And also because I live on the canal as does Sumner, I'm passionate about the water that goes up and down that canal, passionate. And that's something we need to make sure we're looking at as well. But the fact that you can take, there's currently 4 wastewater treatment plants on that canal. When I say the canal, it's Rehoboth, it's Milton, it's the county, and it's us. The fact that you can take one of those out, that's a 20% reduction in risk. That's a material reduction in what's going to happen from a bad day perspective, to use your words, which I wrote down. I like that. I don't like it, but it's very specific. But I think there's work that needs to be done. There's studying, there's understanding, there's really figuring out the details of this deal, and then coming back and having more conversations. I think it's the right way to do it.
Mhm.
I think there's enough value to continue the process, and there's enough concerns to make sure we're asking the right questions as well.
Yeah, and I just want to, I'm very sympathetic to your concerns. The city of Lewes controls the growth inside the city of Lewes. The growth outside the city of Lewes is controlled by Sussex County. And backing what Earl had said, whether the county, we go with the county or not, the only means we have is to speak up at the county level to control the growth. Um, I know that people think that we can, I apologize for using the word constipate them by not taking the sewage. It's not going to change the decisions at the county level. The county has alternative means that they can go to. So I just encourage anyone who's concerned about growth outside of the city limits to make those be heard at the county council and county planning and zoning level. But the wastewater treatment plant, we need to look at from what's best for the environment and the ratepayers and risk factors from a wastewater treatment perspective.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Sam Martin. I'm from Bay Breeze Estates. I want to thank you guys for having this meeting. This is very insightful. I'm by no means a wastewater treatment expert. I basically know nothing about it. I do know there's a lot of government agencies. I know there's a lot of regulations. I have the utmost confidence that whatever is done, it'll be technically done right. I'm gonna approach this from a Lewes resident's perspective. One of the gentlemen said, basically what you're doing is outsourcing wastewater treatment. Outsourcing, you're relinquishing your future, your control, which in a lot of cases, in a long run, turns out to be not so beneficial. So my initial opinion is, I don't think it's a good idea to outsource. Number two, I heard a comment that the facility was state of the art. And then I heard a follow-up comment that the facility is at the end of its life. I can't resolve those in my mind.
No, I apologize. What I meant was the infrastructure, you know, the building and everything else and so forth is fine. But the equipment that's in it, that's doing the processing, is starting to fail. Some one at a time, or not the whole thing at one time. And we're having to look to replace all those things. So that's an ongoing, if we do nothing, we're still going to have that.
Absolutely. The capital equipment is
Mhm.
just a fact of that type of facility. The county would have the same capital equipment needs. What's going to happen is that at least in Lewes, the way it is now, we have control. We know the risks. We know where the skeletons are. When you relinquish that to the county, you're now taking on the county's risk. Now, granted, the county's bigger and you can spread that risk, and you assume that the financial impact of the citizens of Lewes would be not so great. Again, I've seen that a lot of times not to be true. So again, these are just comments that I have. I would expect to see before a decision's made that there would be a detailed cost benefit of analysis on these. And I mean, you guys have done a general ROM. I haven't seen a detailed cost benefit, and I haven't seen a risk assessment, both financially and technically. I would certainly hope that this kind of decision, that those documents would be forthcoming to the public to be reviewed. Now, again, I heard this was a long range issue, but then I hear that the county's expecting a decision, an imminent decision within a month, 2 months. I don't know what their federal funding expires. That to me means a decision has to be made within the month or 2 months or 3 months. That to me is not long range. So I'm asking, what is it? When does the decision to the county have to be given?
I don't have an exact date, obviously, but I think they're looking for months rather than years. I mean, we were on a path of years to, start the process, but, to complete it, we're not in any great rush. So, but I think they're looking for a decision on this, whether we're going to go with them or not, so they can make their decision about how they're going to proceed and use this money that's available to them.
Right. I think it seems to me what the county's doing is forcing a sense of urgency on the city of Lewes, which.
Well,
I
I
don't think
think
it's a-
they're up against some deadlines because of funding issues. ARPA, and people use the term ARPA, it's American Recovery,
American
Rescue.
Rescue.
American Rescue Plan. And those, even the the money has to be committed by 2024 and expended by 2026. There are deadlines that are
Mhm.
set from other agencies, and that's part of what they're up against. You're correct. We were looking at it from a long-term perspective, from sea level rise, what we're going to do with the next generation when of the plant and so on. The reason why this short term has come up is because of the county
Right.
funding. And, just to go back to the equipment, the plant was built 20 years ago. And so the equipment is starting to get old and is need of replacing. But it's just like your house. You buy a house, you have to replace the refrigerator, the air conditioner. It doesn't mean that the house is at the end of its life.
Right.
And that's where we're at.
Mhm.
I know you understand. I just want to make that,
But I'm
clear.
sure you guys have a capital plan. So
Yes,
you
we
have
do.
those, you already have those expenditures identified in the out years as to what
Right.
equipment's. So that to me is really not, it's a non-issue to me. It's an expense, but it's something that we already know.
Right. And the issue is always that when you buy a house, everything comes due at the same time. When you build a plant, everything comes due at the same time, as opposed to, Lewes has been here. I mean, we've been here for 120 years nearly with our systems. So you can spread things out. Things tend to start going all at the same time.
Right, back to the issue though, that when you're talking about long-range planning, 2060 to me is a long range.
Yes.
2024 is not a long
Yeah.
range. to me.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you had a slide and you said there was financial, technical, and then you said something about sensitive civic considerations.
I think just what you were pointing out.
Is that what
I was
your
trying to,
definition? I didn't know if
say
there
that,
was some,
it's not a legal thing. It's not a
Okay.
financial thing,
okay,
but we know we have this relationship or a relationship with the county that's not always wonderful.
right.
And
Sure.
I was just pointing that out. And we expected that kind of conversation to come up tonight. And if we wanted to
Okay.
find out how deep that was.
Okay. Okay, I really appreciate it and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
And I think, maybe just to reiterate about the, quasi urgency of all this. The reason that the county came to us was they are going to basically redo their Wolf Neck plant. And they're in the design, they're doing the designing and they're figuring out what they're going to do. And they already have, to design a plant the way they have their other plants. And they came to us and they said, okay, but if we can work with you, we can use your permit and so forth and so on. Then we can build the plant so that we treat the water, treat the sewage way more than we ordinarily would. So the point is, they're going to do it whether we join with them or not. If we don't join with them, they're just going to do what they normally do, and that's the end of it, and we're done. So that's the reason why we need to get, moving on this if we're doing anything, because they're going to have to redesign the plant that they're going to build. So basically, that's the, yeah.
This, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Just one real quick question. Joe Elder, 426 Park Avenue. What is the cost going to be to run the piping from Lewes currently out to this new plant? Where would it go and how hard would that be?
Part of this offer was that they would take care of that, so that's not in our realm.
Oh, are you saying a new plant or the?
Well,
county plant?
if you would hook up to the new plant,
To-
how
to-
far away is it from Lewes to this new
The
plant?
county's plant, you mean?
Yes.
No, we would not be responsible for that cost under this proposal.
Okay, it would be put in kind.
The county would
The
take
county
care of
would
Okay,
cover
That's the
that.
only question I have.
Thank you. I'm sorry, ma'am, I saw even,
Excuse me, ma'am, in the front.
yeah.
Yeah.
Stephanie DeSantis,
Nice to-
One Drake Knoll. I don't even know what questions I have because I don't think we have enough information to be able to give you really concrete things. I have a lot of question about how the water's moving from point A to point B, over what land that's going over, how sensitive is that land for it to get from point A to point B. You know, what I'm kind of hearing and what I'm afraid of for our residents is it seems to me that Lewes residents would be end up paying maybe double of what their current wastewater bills are, especially if it's the county treats it at this new plant and then we double treat it at our plant that we keep to make sure that what we put into the bay is as clean as possible. I don't have any confidence that if we outsource this to the county, that we are going to have any control either over rates, that bigger houses out here, you know, somebody in the audience said, oh, everybody's house here is $1 million and this is cheap. I'm sorry, you know, not everybody is living in those kind of luxury houses here. I'm afraid that we will be footing the bill for the continued growth in the county. As it is, the city of Lewes residents pay more for services because we pay city tax, we pay county tax. If I lived in Wolf Run, I would just be paying county tax. So I am a little bit worried about what it does to cost. I don't have a lot of confidence that the county is going to do it right and do it right over the long haul. All you have to do is drive out to Donovan Smith Trailer Park and look at the seeping sewage that comes up from some of those failing septic systems that the county has allowed to continue to fester. And so I would hate to see us give up what I think is basically a clean discharge on a hard-earned permit on a plant that was built with a lot of thought in it. And I think you guys already have a perception problem. I think it's what somebody in the audience alluded to earlier. While the plant is state of the art, the running of it has been a little bit lax in terms of the problems that happen with equipment failing and not having the filters maintained and some of those things. And I can only see those problems. I can't even imagine if the county's having to deal with the high flow of summer season of processing all the waste that is in the beach area in the summers of what it's going to be and whatnot. And I have a lot more confidence that we're going to do it right. We've learned some lessons for letting filters get out of date. And just like you have to maintain a car that you replace pumps and pipes and whatnot, you have to do that with the state-of-the-art facility that you built. So I don't think that we should be rushing to jump on the county's proposal. Certainly wouldn't want to see it unless the members of the county are here and we all get to see, you know, what they have in mind. I think your numbers are probably pretty low in terms of your projections of how much things would cost, just based on what I was looking at. And I missed a little bit of the first part of your talk and I tried to find the PowerPoint on the website. I couldn't find it. So if you could make sure it's easily findable so I can
We
take a
give you
look at
copy
it.
of too.
I asked and they said they didn't have an extra set.
Okay. I haven't looked.
But I think there's a lot more questions. I certainly don't understand enough about how you know, if pumping more water, even if it's at low tide, what's the effect of that on the environment? And what's that do to the houses that are near that? I don't know enough to be able to give you an opinion, but I certainly don't trust the county. I think anybody who lives in Lewes can look at the other decisions that the county has made and how they maintain the roads and services around here to not have a lot of trust. And so I certainly don't think you should rush into that decision, even if the county's under the gun about getting things going.
Oh, by the way, you mentioned the county not being here. They wanted to be here and we suggested that they not come so we could talk amongst ourselves before we have the pressure from them.
That's fine.
There. So but they wanted to participate, but I thought that'd be the next step if we go
It
that
doesn't even seem to me that you guys have enough of, I don't know if you have a written proposal from the county, if that's something that certainly should be shared with the public, but I don't think there's enough information for us to give you a really good guidance on what to do, but I'm going with my gut of not trusting the county.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Curtis again, Ship Carpenter. As I hear people reacting, it seems like there's interest in more study before making a decision. And, you know, looking at the three options, I think I would favor moving the wastewater treatment plant, going to something more state of the art, more something like hydrocarbon thermal carbonization, or hydrothermal rather carbonization. I sent an article to BPW a month or two ago about what Phoenixville is doing with that, with their wastewater treatment plant. A city in Pennsylvania that has a population of about 14,000 people, 4 square mile city. And they expect that their wastewater treatment plant, which is supposed to be coming online before the summer, will ultimately pay for itself, because the product that comes out of this, instead of being sludge that you have to pay to landfill, is fuel. And they're going to use it to run their plant, to create electricity to run their wastewater treatment plant. The liquid that comes out of it is supposed to be suitable for use as fertilizer. There's a lot of new stuff out there, and I would love to see Lewes be more state of the art, and also the whole thing, the wastewater gets treated a lot quicker. So the footprint you need for a new plant would be smaller. And there's a lot of good things to look at, and they're so close, you know, a couple hours away. It would be good if you could talk to those people and see how they're doing before you make a decision.
Well, thank you again.
Okay.
Austin, do people online?
I'm Mark Prouty with Wolf Point. Press knows me from many years ago. I've been involved with wastewater for quite a while in my life.
We worked together as a project manager.
I worked for a small firm called Tapman and Lee. You may have heard of it. But the question I have has to do with the Cape Henlopen treatment plant. And I'm just curious, when I wrote the report about the discharge of nutrients in the canal based on a study that was done by Geologic Survey, I believe it was, or DENREC, some group. They were also concerned about the discharge from Cape Henlopen, which goes through rapid infiltration basins, and they were worried about the seep. They apparently monitored that seep, and the nutrients were joining the flow. Has there been any dollars and cents talked with the federal government?
Well, why don't you bring something to where our negotiations are with the parks?
We actively discussing it. I believe they were at 33% or 44% design,
Yeah.
but it's being discussed.
Yeah, so the plant, they've put together schematic plans that the board reviewed. Now it's back in the Department of Parks
I see.
court. But we do have funding for it set up through the state. So once they pull the trigger, the project could go with
Yeah.
that funding. Yeah.
And would that funding be from the long named fund source?
Yeah,
Those
it would
separate-
be a regular DENREC state revolving fund. loan.
Okay. And the other question was, are there any of these federal funds available for the work that you all are talking about, whichever alternative comes to fruition?
Well, yes, the city has some that we're trying to talk to them about using.
Okay.
So they got some
And,
ARPA funds.
and the county, do they?
Yeah, they got a big chunk. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I hear that without any capital expenditure by BPW to send to the county, I'm sure that their costs of borrowing is going to come back in our, our annual costs. So I just wondering if their funding includes some grants to decrease keep our costs down a little bit too.
Well, they mentioned a figure, was it 24 million?
From the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
ARPA
have,
funds.
yeah, the building, the infrastructure law that was passed in the fall, there's $40 million over the next 5 years dedicated to wastewater projects. 50% of which, roughly 50% would be grant money, but that's for every project in every community that goes after it. So they would have to prioritize the project.
I see.
But then they put aside 20, I think it was 24 million of ARPA funds for this,
Mhm.
for the Wolf Neck plant.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, 24, 25 million.
Actually, I think what they would do, they were gonna use it for other things to free up money to pay for Wolfport.
I see. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Evening, thank you. My name is Alan Roth. I live just a couple blocks down on Kings Highway, and I wanted to wait until everybody else in the room had spoken because I've only lived here for 2 months. So
Oh, welcome.
thank you. I probably know the least of anyone in the room about what's happening here. So I come without any preconceived notions about what the right answer here is. Excuse me. But I did serve for 9 years on the board of directors of DC Water.
Oh.
So I geek out a little. So I don't want, I listened to the presentation and I don't want to weigh in favor or against any particular option. But I thought I would offer up what might be helpful by way of analogy. In DC, DC Water owns the Blue Plains Wastewater Treatment Plant. But by virtue of what's called the intermunicipal agreement, a multi-jurisdictional agreement that's been in place now for close to 30 years, I think it's only been renegotiated once. DC Water takes a portion of the wastewater from Fairfax County, Prince George's County, and Montgomery County. Those counties pay a wholesale rate to DC Water for the service that Blue Plains provides. In this situation, my assumption is that the county would want you to pay a rate to them. It wouldn't just be they take your wastewater. The question is, what rate would they charge? And would it be a wholesale rate? Would it be a retail rate? It's nice to say that, oh yes, they'll pay for the cost of the pipe that runs from here to there. But my assumption is they build in to their rate the capital cost or some portion of the capital cost of what it costs to build the pipe from here to there. That's a subject presumably.
We
for
haven't gotten
negotiation.
that far yet.
Right, it's presumably a subject for negotiation.
As we mentioned, we take some of their flow presently and they pay us the retail rate.
So the other piece of this is that by virtue of that intermunicipal agreement, the counties in DC get a seat on the board of directors of DC Water. So they're not just customers, they're a part of the governance of that organization. Now, they're not a majority, but for 30 years, almost 30 years, they've had a say in how that operation works. They don't get a say in how the retail rates are set for DC Water customers, but they get a say and an equal say pretty much in how the plant is operated by virtue of the fact that they're not just customers, they're stakeholders in the operation of the plant. And so I've heard the word joint venture used, and there's lots of different ways to structure a joint venture. And so if you're going to go that route, my suggestion would be, I think what I heard before is, it sounds like they need you as much as you're considering using them. Structure a joint venture so that you're not just customers, you're stakeholders in the governance of the operation. The other point that was made just a moment ago, and I think it's worth pursuing, is that if you're going to build a new plant, look into the waste to energy option. Again, I have no idea what the cost would be for something on this scale, but in doing some capital improvements at Blue Plains, DC Water built a facility that generates 1/3 of the electricity that the plant uses and creates Class A biosolids that they now sell as a product for fertilizer and landscaping. I don't know whether that's feasible on a scale of this size, but if you're going to go the route of building a new plant, you might as well look into it.
Sure.
So
So
thank you very much.
just, you're talking about, we don't have any formal offering yet from the county, but the concept was that they would pay for all the capital costs out of county funds. And what we would get charged would be a prorated portion of the operation and maintenance of the plant. But we don't have any of the details worked out on that. So it wasn't that they were going to be coming back and charging us for the capital costs over a period of time.
I understand what you're saying theoretically.
Yes.
My assumption is that their accountants and financial people are sitting there saying, how are we going to recoup those capital costs? Are we going to spread it out over the entirety of the county? Or are we going to figure out a way to charge it back to Lewes?
The devil's in the details.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Welcome again.
Thank you.
Yes, Stephanie.
Ask a follow-up question, because something I thought I heard Austin say, but maybe I misheard him. Is the county trying to piggyback on the permit that Lewes already has?
On the outfall permit. Well, I guess you could call it piggybacking.
And what do they do if we say no? Like, we're not gonna discharge it? Do they have plan B if Lewes doesn't go along?
They do.
What's their plan B? Do you know?
Well, as I understand it, they pump a lot of their wastewater from this area out to Long Neck. They have quite a large piece of property out there where they spray irrigate. And I think they have hundreds, if not thousands of acres out there that they can pump it out there. So they would have to pump it that direction. I think that's at least one of their options.
Okay.
It's roughly 2,000 acres, I
2,000
believe.
acres. Yeah, it's pretty big parcel out there.
All right. And so if Lewes didn't participate in this new upgrade that they're going to do, does it negatively impact us at all?
Not that I know of, I don't know all the details, but I don't think so.
When you say negatively impact us,
I don't even know enough about the
Well-
crap going this way and that way to be able to answer that
the
question, but
negative is that we would be standing on our own.
Yeah.
We'd have to take care of,
which we do pretty much now.
Yeah.
well, but we'd have to either harden the plant or move the plant. So, I mean,
it is possible, I guess, that they don't discharge to our plant anymore, which is free money for us right now, because we can use that flow in the winter, and because our plant's underloaded at the time. So
Okay.
yeah, we would lose that revenue, but it wouldn't be, we didn't have it before and it's just found money.
Yeah, and what percentage of your budget is that represent in terms of the wastewater treatment?
Do you have any idea, Austin?
I'd have to go back and look, but it's not, you're talking a flow in the sun or in the wintertime of 400,000 gallons. It doesn't make up a large portion of that budget.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do think the conversations around price and control are critically important. The one thing that we do get as an advantage, other than getting something out of a low-lying area, is the synergies associated with being with somebody else. We've all kind of got our own little fiefdoms, just to say some degree, and to the degree that you can actually pull those resources together, it becomes a lot more efficient from a cost perspective and a timing perspective. So there are advantages that we need to make sure we're really uncovering to see what they are, but also to see how, to some other points, how people will apply the expenses that we had to pay.
Sure, and if the partner were somebody named other than Sussex County Council, I might like trust it a little bit better.
I understand.
And I would say, just to give credit where credit's due, from the engineering side of things or from the wastewater side of things, separating it, not separating from Sussex County, but just realizing that when we do have a need, we have the ability to call on them. And really, I believe, in my opinion, a lot of this is come from our joint workshop with Sussex County, talking about mutual aid, because we all realize that you are at, I don't want to call the end of the extension line, but we realized after the result of August 15th that if you have a failure at 4, you need to be able to react. And that reaction on the 15th caused us to realize we need to think beyond just today. You got to think of tomorrow. And Sussex County has the ability, and we talked about bidirectional flow and being able to send flow back to them when you have a situation at 4. And so I think that was the basis behind, the aha moment, I guess you would say. Just understanding that, it's that discussion of, helping someone out, your neighbor, however you want to say it.
And just so everyone understands, pump station 4 is the pump station that's right at the bridge on Savannah. And it is the main pump station that takes everything from the town side and pumps over to the wastewater treatment plant. So it is the most major, with pump station 8 being secondary, which is the main pump station that takes everything from the beach and sends it to the wastewater treatment plant.
The other thing, Stephanie, we've been talking to the engineers that actually run the system and run the plant. And I've also been to county council meetings and so forth. They're two different things.
Sumner Crosby again. I just want to point out, I didn't say anything about what I should have started with, and you just talked about it, Austin, and Tom has mentioned it before. We spent a lot of time in the city talking about coastal resiliency. And what I just heard Austin say was all about resiliency. What I heard Earl say a few minutes ago was all about resiliency. We have choices. We have the ability to adapt to a number of different situations that may arise. Right now, we are on an island. We are on our own. We have to rely on being able to call the county and say, can you help us out? We're stuck. Maybe one day if we have the lagoons, we'll have a little more flexibility, but right now we don't have that. I would urge you to develop some graphics to help us all better understand and be able to grapple with these large numbers that you presented in the first couple of slides, because I think it would help. I mean, those are big numbers.
Yeah.
And I'd ask that when you do that, we also look at the thing I was trying to get at before, which is, you said something about TMDL. I'm not an engineer. I rely on people like Charlie. But if you double or 2.5 times the flow, we're basically running about 1 million gallons a day. And we go to 2.7 million gallons a day coming through that same pipe into the same canal at twice the concentration. If I've done my math right, that's a 6x increase in the load in the pounds discharged to the canal. I may have that wrong, but I guess I'd like to see that along with everything else.
We're about 1 million now on average, right? And
Right.
so for 2.75, then we're.
Right, but if you express it in terms of the volume you're doing plus the increased concentration, and you factor that in as
Yeah.
pounds of nitrogen or whatever it might be, I'm assuming it's more than doubling. That's all I'm trying to get at. Anyway, this resiliency thing is something we all need to take very seriously. I mean, I want to come back to what Mr. Panetta said about, we ultimately we can't stay where we are. We've got to do something. And we need to keep that in mind. We have time now, but given the conversation, we need that time in order to make the changes necessary.
So we do have a couple questions in the chat. One, there's really two from Lawrence Furman. He actually rephrased his question. He said, could we have a spreadsheet with current and future capacities, inflows, outflows, effluent quality, et cetera, for the current Lewes plant, the current Wolf Neck plant, and the hypothetical joint plant? Also projections based off growth in BPW service area and county. I know it's early, but best current estimates. Thanks. So, I mean, you can, one of the things is we have our reports that come from Infomark, and a lot of the information off of current flows is on there. Current readings as far as nitrogen, phosphorus, all that, that's all on it every single month. I encourage you to come to the BCW board meetings. We're trying to get a little bit more of a turnout at those. We can certainly look into what Sussex County has. We can do our best to. And then we have Bonnie Osler, and she said she has a couple questions. We may have answered some of them. She says, what is the approximate daily volume and processed wastewater from the BPW into the canal now? And what will it be with the county? So you're talking about average about 1 million. With the county, it'd be about 2.75 million gallons a day. You've discussed the financial aspect on the BPW. If the county processes Lewes wastewater, what will be the effect on the rates and the ready to serve charges? I think we've stated that we're fairly early. That's probably one of the top questions that everybody's asked. So obviously that would be one that we would look very heavily into, and what that impact would be over, a allotted amount of time. Question 3 from Bonnie is, please provide more information on the ecological effect on the canal and the bay from this proposal. You noted the water quality will not be as good as it is now, but how bad will it be?
Well, go ahead. But no, I mean, the water going into the canal now is, it looks like drinking water. You can't tell. I think we have the best effluent in the state. I really believe that. I haven't checked with Denrec on that.
Yeah,
but
I mean, we
believe
talk a lot about nitrogen and phosphorus, but the other pollutant loadings that have always been an issue are known as total suspended solids and biological oxygen demand. And we do absolutely have the lowest in the state of Delaware. And that's a function of the membrane cartridges. They just filter all that out. But our nutrient removal, it's in the business, we call it biological nutrient removal level. There is enhanced nutrient removal, but that's usually the addition of more chemicals, which we could achieve, at least on the phosphorus side. Nitrogen would be the one thing that we would need to keep track of through this whole thing.
But overall, the flow going into the canal is better than the canal water. I mean, it's just like drinking water. If you couldn't tell the difference if you've seen it. It's crystal clear, and it's really good stuff. And as I said, it's the best in the state. So
We have a glass at the outfall of the plant if anybody wants to.
Yeah, I was
try it
gonna
out.
say, one of the things we were doing before COVID was tours of the plant. And I don't know if we're ready to start that up again, but I encourage anyone to go out and take a tour of the plant. And one of the things at the end is you can see the quality of the water going out into the canal.
And taste
So-
it. If it's your flavor.
If our old general manager was here, he would encourage you to, but we do not recommend that. But I really do seriously think that if you go through and walk through the plant, it is an eye opener. It is not a smelly, stinky place. It is clean, and it is amazing to see what goes in and what goes out.
I think everybody should realize, though, even if the Wolf Neck plant were to be upgraded, it would still meet the requirements of the current board and PDS permit requirements. So just
Yes.
keep that in mind.
Hi, my name's Bob Heffernan. I'm 510 Railroad Avenue. I think part of our understanding problem here tonight is we really don't know what's on offer from the county. Alan's made some suggestions about maybe it becomes a joint venture and you have some control like that. But they've sort of come to you and said, let's make a deal now. And they really haven't, you know, maybe that's a good thing if they give you a hell of an offer. But I don't know what that offer is, and apparently you don't either. And it seems like, you know, the kinds of flows that come out of Lewes that they're going to try to treat at this new plant are probably significant. But if they issue a few more building permits, it's just a year or two of evolution in their flows. So if they want to make a hell of a deal, let's find out what that is.
Yeah, and Bob, you're absolutely right. We do not know a lot of the details, and we wanted to come and get the public's input before proceeding, because we did not want to go down the line where we were leading the county down a path that we were not going to get support by you folks from. So, you know, we debated, should we get something firmer or should we get public input?
I understand.
This is the first step in that. And the next step is we all need to know what's going on.
If in fact the water coming out is cleaner than what we do now or plan to do, then, you know, let's explore that. But if you're getting the bum's rush, no. And you have a nice plant, it's run well. Let's keep it that way. I would much rather have the wastewater treatment plant there than new condos.
Got that right. Thank you.
And just to follow up though on Sumner's comment, you know, part of this is about resiliency of making, and I use that term in the broad sense, that the plant be resilient, that if there's a mishap at the plant, we have a backup.
Yes, ma'am.
On that resiliency issue. Sorry, on that resiliency issue. Right now, we have a backup, and the county has a backup with us. But if we're gone, doesn't the county lose some resiliency? I mean, okay, they send us just a small portion of their flow, but you know, they do send us some. And a new plant, they wouldn't need to, but if they had a problem, maybe we'd have spare parts they could use. Maybe, you know, we could help them out technically. So even though there is, you know, the fiefdom issue and duplicating engineering and duplicating management and all that, there are also resiliency advantages to it.
Of course, they're a pretty big operation. You know, they've got hundreds of people, so they've been helpful to us. And I
Okay.
guess we try to be helpful to them, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
I read somewhere where they have like 7 or 8 different interconnections. They have one with us, but they have a lot of others as well. And it's the synergy of size advantage that, you know, that they have. I'm also reminded, I looked up Hurricane Sandy in 2012. That was a 14-foot wave surge in New York and New Jersey. If that hit us like it hit them, we would have a bad day. And you never know when that day's coming.
Well, are there any other questions? We've been here an hour and 3/4 almost. Is there anything else? I'm not rushing anybody, but
That's all right.
you've all been great. Thank you very much for coming out. And if you have any more thoughts afterwards, call Austin.
I have a question for everybody. We're talking about the possibility of having to move the plant.
Robin, what's your phone number?
So the question is, where would that be? And how much would it cost to buy the land to get it somewhere that would be reasonable? I mean, somewhere around Lewes, we're not going to move the plant to Georgetown. So if any of you out there have any idea where we could put it and how much it might cost to do that, we would really be happy to get that information.
Sounds like you made a decision that the hardening of the existing plant is not enough.
Well, the problem is, and
No,
I've
No,
seen
we
the
made no
report
decisions.
for 100 years now. Now people are saying the 100-year is going to be really more like 50. But the 100-year was sea level 4.5 feet. At 4.5 feet, there's 2 feet of water from Bay Avenue all the way to the city, which means 2 feet of water where the roads are and where the plant is. So the question is, the plant's going to be fine, but how are we going to get there to run it? I'm sorry?
I have 2 kayaks.
Oh, good.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
And how much rent do you want?